Good afternoon, everyone. We have a quorum with Chair Wisnauskas, Holly Light, and Mr. Valleja representing Ken Adams. Is there a motion to call to order the meeting of the members of the Housing Trust Fund Corporation?
So moved.
Thank you. In a second.
Second.
Members will also be meeting in their capacity as members of the Audit and Governance Committees. Is there a motion to call to order the Audit and Governance Committee meetings?
Motion moved.
In a second.
Second.
These first and seconds will be used throughout today's meetings unless a director wishes to record his or her vote differently. The first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes held on February 14th, 2019. Are there any questions or comments about those minutes? If there are none, the minutes will be deemed approved. The second item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing the approval of the annual budget request for state fiscal year 2019-2020, and Stacy Mickle will present that.
Good afternoon. Every year I am required as the treasurer to present to you a request for the annual budget for this upcoming fiscal year. This is to comply, obviously, with our bylaws, but also to comply with the Public Authorities Accountability Act. Each year I present in December the required ABO format to you, bringing back to you a copy or a more up-to-date version of the actual details with the administrative and programmatic budgets based on the latest information that's available to us for the various components of the budget. This year the administrative budget has a couple of changes. The first one being the PBCA fees. According to the latest information we received from HUD, they extended our current year PBCA contract through June 30th of this year. But when they did that extension, they indicated that they would either seek an RFP sometime this spring or would negotiate with the different states for a lower rate. So to be conservative, we estimated a lower rate for the PBCA fees starting in July of this year. I spoke with Dan Beyer, and we agreed that who's in Syracuse, who he and I conservatively put in the last proposal that we had submitted to HUD, which is at roughly half of the current rate for the fees. So when you look at that, it does show that we are lower on the fee revenue for PBCA, which means that we would need to access corporate funds to fully fund the proposed expenditures for the upcoming year. Obviously, we're hoping that will change and that the HUD agreement starting on July 1 will remain at current levels. If that were to happen, that's great for us, but we did want to present a budget that would be more conservative and show that lower rate. We have a little bit higher expenditures this year due to increased personal services costs and some actual contractual obligations that are higher. Some of the contractual obligations that are higher are direct result of the HCV program, which HCV is fully funded and fully reimbursed by the HCV administrative fees. And the largest component of that increase is related to the SCIVs, or the State Housing Choice Voucher System replacement, which is their IT service system that they're planning to replace this year. We have an overall increase over last year of staffing by about 10 staff over the course of last year to this year, while we're also seeing that the staffing on the GOSR, the Governor's Office for Storm Recovery, is actually declining, which was what we had anticipated. For the programmatic funding that's reflected in the budget, the best available information we had at the time is based on the Governor's proposed executive budget. They are reflecting the proposed appropriation levels that he has presented to the legislature. Obviously, these numbers are still in draft format and may change depending on what happens with the final budget for the year. For programmatic, some highlights there. The Rural Rental Assistance Program is being moved off of the Mortgage Insurance Fund and is going to be fully funded, or is going to be funded under state appropriations. They are the proposal was to move 100% of the Neighborhood and Rural Preservation Program funding to the MIF, but they would be at lower levels. There's a $72 million proposed appropriation for the Governor's Office for Storm Recovery. There's a $5 million proposal for the Manufactured Home Advantage Program, a $13 million proposal for Seneca flooding. Last fall, the New York State Department of Health notified HTFC and DHCR that after we make the April 1st, 2019 payments for the Nursing Home Transition Diversion Waiver Program, that DOH will assume the responsibilities of that program and it will no longer be the responsibility of HTFC, DHCR to administer. Also in the last year, for the federal fiscal year, which runs October 1 to September 30th, there was an increase in the CDBG and home appropriations. We are anticipating that at a minimum, that those levels will remain flat, but obviously we won't know that till much closer to the start of the federal fiscal year. I think that's the highlights of the budget this year. Are there any specific questions I could address for you?
Can I ask one really quick, Stacey? I'm sorry, I missed what you said the number was for the Seneca program? The Seneca flood?
I think it was $13 million is the proposal.
13. Thanks.
Yep.
I'm good. I already asked Stacey 492 questions.
If there are no questions, then now before the board is a resolution authorizing the approval of the annual budget request for the state fiscal year 1920, assuming the first and second previously entered for the board, as well as for the audit and governance committees. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The motion is passed and the resolution adopted. Next is a resolution authorizing funding for tenant relocations and entering into a relocation consultant service contract. Mark?
Is Marilyn on the?
Oh, Marilyn, I'm sorry.
Mariline's going to be presenting.
Yes, good afternoon, members of the board. In accordance with the Housing Trust Fund Corporation's established policy for empowered project funds and pursuant to the corporation's procurement and contract guidelines and Section 2879 of the Public Authorities Law, we're seeking authorization for relocation consultant services with 3D Development Group, LLC, that will enable HCR to relocate residents who wish to do so from deteriorating living conditions at Unicorn Apartments. Unicorn Apartments is a 3-story elevated building that was previously used as a dormitory facility for nearby Niagara Community College that was converted into 28 one-bedroom apartments through the turnkey program using $2,002,576 of Housing Trust Fund grant funds under SHARS ID 1990-1471. The project owner and operator is the Cambria Housing Authority. The senior project serves households between 30 and 80% of the area median income, with most households considered very low income. The project has struggled financially with very low occupancy rates compounded by low rents. Multiple attempts at restructuring were not successful. A foreclosure action was delayed in 2018 by the intervention of HCR staff. An agreement to pay the delinquent taxes was entered into with Niagara County, but the Cambria Housing Authority decided not to make the payments. On January 10th, we visited Unicorn Apartments to assess the physical condition of the units and common areas. Multiple exigent items were identified, many past their useful lifespan, including an elevator that breaks down repeatedly, a leaking roof that makes units uninhabitable, the boilers, the main entrance door is unable to hold its hardware and is no longer functioning properly. The fire exit door does not close properly. The water heaters, the radiation heaters located in each dwelling unit are damaged. The exterior walking surfaces plus numerous appliances and finishes. On January 29th, we
Sure,
were
do you want
notified.
to list it? Yeah, maybe you could just list the things that do work. And that Sorry, go ahead.
No.
The water.
On January 29th, we were notified that the elevator had broken down. Since the parts are obsolete, the elevator cannot be repaired to permanent functionality. The absence of a consistently functioning elevator is a hardship on the elderly tenants residing on the upper floors. The project owner, the Cambria Housing Authority, has repeatedly indicated and demonstrated that it is unable to fulfill its fiduciary responsibilities to oversee this affordable housing asset. The project does not have the funds to cover the elevator replacement or make any of the major repairs and replacements that I just mentioned. To mitigate the continued adverse and potentially unsafe effects on the senior community, we propose entering into a critical contract with 3D Development Group LLC, a vendor with a successful track record of performing relocations of residents for housing authorities that are redeveloped. The relocation plan has 3 primary goals. 1, to ensure that tenants will continue to live in affordable housing that meets their housing needs. 2, to minimize the negative impacts caused by relocation to the greatest extent possible. And 3, to ensure that tenants are compensated for the cost of moving and incidental expenses. Section 2879 of the Public Authorities Law and the Housing Trust Fund Corporation's guidelines require members to approve procurement contracts that exceed 1 year in duration or $100,000 in amount. While total expenditures under the contract with 3D Development Group LLC are not anticipated to exceed $106,255, only $24,725 will be paid to the vendor for the procurement of goods and services. The balance of the funds will be monies that pass through from the Housing Trust Fund Corp. To the vendor, to the tenants, for moving expenses, supplemental rent payments, or security deposit assistance, and transportation fees. The budget breakdown of expenses is before you. Please note that the households will not be cut off of our short-term assistance without longer-term assistance being identified. We are requesting approval to spend an amount not to exceed $106,255 to allow the contractor to provide the residents with the opportunity to relocate, which includes but is not limited to relocation services, reasonable moving costs, utility connection fees, security deposits and/or rent differential, and transportation costs to establish a new home. Authorization to enter into a relocation services agreement with 3D Development Group LLC is being submitted to the board for approval. In consideration of the recommendations of staff, it is respectfully requested that the transmitted resolution be adopted by the board approving and authorizing the Housing Trust Fund Corporation to enter into relocation consultant services agreement with 3D Development Group LLC for a 1-year period in an amount not to exceed $106,255.
Lisa,
If you have any
just-
questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I don't think he has a question for Lisa.
Yeah, I just had a question for Lisa Pagnazzi on the procurement. So Lisa, we're paying $106,000, but isn't the procurement just $24,000? The amount that's going to the other is just passed through to the tenants.
And that was my argument. But Wanda wanted to get a waiver on this since it will appear on the procurement contract report as $106,000. So she did get a waiver, and we're going over what we need to do.
Okay.
You're right, though. You're right. Most of the money is passed through.
Yeah, okay. And so just it was recommended to you, you say in the memo, by some developers in upstate. Who are the developers who recommended 3D, and did we do some check?
Yeah, the 3D development is currently being under contract through the Geneva Housing Authority for their relocation services, which is being preserved under HTR funding.
And those are the folks that referred them to us?
We were also referred by Donna Barnafidecci, who is a known developer in the area.
Okay.
And 3D has done a number of other public housing restructurings, tax credit deals in our other housing authorities.
All right, Mark,
So
thank you.
Is there a plan for Unicorn once everyone's out?
So, so Marilyn, stop me here, but I think our priority now is to get the residents out,
Course,
and then
yeah.
this is one of many buildings in a former military installation, and so I think there's a question about like the other buildings as well. So I think if there is no larger plan, then we would look for some HCR resources to address the property, but we're not committing to doing anything about the property right now because it's one of many. No, this is a different one. Sorry, this is outside of Buffalo.
Yeah.
This is not the Fort Drum one.
Sorry. But one of those military where it's all like, they have more housing
It
than
was
they
probably
need
built
now.
as temporary and
Right, and that became a
We just
dorm, and
don't
then
have
became
people.
this.
Lockport Air Base. Cambria, all right.
Okay. Linda?
sorry.
Okay.
I think we just got good news. So now before the board is a resolution authorizing funding for tenant relocations and entering into a relocation consultant service contract with 3D Development Group, assuming the first and second previously entered for the board. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried and the resolution adopted. Next is a resolution approving funding to reimburse DHCR for IT consultant service costs. Dan?
Good afternoon. As Stacy mentioned earlier in her presentation, the Section 8 statewide housing choice voucher system, or SCIVVs as it's known, is the major technology system that's used to administer the over 44,000 housing choice vouchers handled by the Housing Trust Fund Corporation as the statewide PHA. That system is in the process of being replaced, and we are working collaboratively with the Office of Information Technology Services to replace it over the next 24 months, and presently have a request for proposals on the street to seek vendors to do so. However, over the next 24 months, we need to continue to operate the existing system, which was built in-house in a power builder format. And unfortunately for us, the architect of that system and the primary staff lead who has maintained it over the past several decades is going to be retiring in July. ITS's recommendation was for us to, instead of attempting to identify a permanent employee for a database that will not be staying, that we instead go with a temporary consultant who could maintain it on a short-term basis and also provide some consulting on the new system once we're ready to implement. We were able to access OGS's HBITS procurement panel, or Hourly Based Information Technology Services panel, and ITS assisted us in conducting a mini bid, which led to the selection of Computer Technology Services of Albany, who has already identified a qualified consultant, Jones Siadianco. I'll learn how to pronounce that name at some point, Jones Sidianco, who has tentatively agreed to work for us over the next 24 months. So the estimated cost of this over the next year is around $290,000. Rounding up just for contingencies, we are requesting authorization to reimburse DHCR, who will go through OGS to access the HBITS contract, for up to $300,000 over the next 2 years, using HCV federal administrative funds. Any questions?
No.
There are no questions, and now before the board is resolution approving funding to reimburse DHCR for IT consultant services for HBITS to maintain a statewide Section 8 housing choice voucher system. To maintain the computer system related to the Section 8 statewide housing choice voucher system, assuming the first and second previously entered for the board. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried and the resolution adopted. Next for the board's consideration is a resolution authorizing a legal services contract with Morris, Manning, and Martin.
Hi.
Do you want
to? I'll just reference this, and then legal staff can fill in as necessary. Also, as mentioned earlier, the Section 8 Performance-Based Contract Administration contract, or PBCA contract, is anticipated to be up for reprocurement by HUD again this year. You may remember that last year HUD issued a draft RFP that, if implemented, would have been extremely disadvantageous to HTFC in the state of New York, but later canceled that request for proposals. However, they are anticipating issuing a new RFP in the coming 12 months. It's anticipated that we'll need to respond to that RFP, while at the same time considering our legal options to preserve our rights under the 1937 Federal Housing Act. Assisting us in doing that over the past several years has been Andrew Moore, who is a nationally renowned federal procurement lawyer with specific experience and expertise in the PBCA saga, which both legally and from a procurement standpoint has in reality played out over the past 10 years. Andrew recently changed firms, so we need to reauthorize our contract for him. He now works for Morris, Manning, and Martin, and has brought his staff with him and all of his expertise. So we are asking for a new authorization for that firm of a 3-year period. In case you're curious, we've spent about $68,000 with him in the past 2 years, collaborating with other states and working together to protect our contract. Any questions?
All right. If there are no questions, then now before the board is resolution authorizing HTFC to enter into a legal services contract with Morris, Manning, and Martin, LLP, assuming the first and second previously entered for the board. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried and the resolution adopted. Now before the board for consideration is a resolution authorizing CDBG funds to Herkimer County for Tractor Supply Company.
Good afternoon.
Makes sense.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Herkimer County is requesting $750,000 in CDBG economic development funds to assist Tractor Supply Company with working capital expenses and the purchase of machinery and equipment. As with most companies, Tractor Supply is increasing their e-commerce and internet sales, and this new facility in Frankfort in Herkimer County will serve as kind of the hub for their New England customers and their e-commerce sales. Tractor Supply offers products for home improvement, agriculture, lawn and garden maintenance, livestock, equine, and pet care supplies. And this is a great benefit as Herkimer County has lost several large businesses over the last several years. The proposed total project of $6,016,000 will create 79 full-time equivalent jobs over the 2 years, with all of them or 100% to benefit low to moderate income persons. CDBG funds will be used for working capital, machinery, and equipment, and the cost per job is at $9,494. Each dollar in CDBG funds provided will leverage 702 in private investment. We're requesting a recommendation and resolution to provide CDBG economic development funds to Herkimer County for Tractor Supply. Any questions?
There are none. Then now before the board is a resolution authorizing CDBG funds for Herkimer County for Tractor Supply Company, assuming the first and second previously entered for the board. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried and the resolution adopted. Now for the board's consideration is a resolution authorizing CDBG funds to Niagara County for Empire Emergency Apparatus.
Thank you. Niagara County is requesting $216,000 in CDBG economic development funds to assist Empire Emergency Apparatus. This company takes a raw vehicle and converts it or uplifts it to accommodate the needs of fire departments, police, SWAT units, public works, and other emergency service providers. The demand for their product has increased, and so they must expand their current facility. The proposed total project cost of $1,466,000 will create 15 jobs over the 2 years, with 86% of them to benefit low to moderate income individuals. CDBG funds will be used for furniture, fixtures, equipment, as well as inventory and working capital, and the cost per job is $14,400, with $5.80 leveraged in private investment for each dollar in CDBG. We're requesting a recommendation resolution to provide economic development funds to Niagara County for Empire Emergency Apparatus Company.
Are there any questions?
Nope.
If there are no questions, then now before the board is resolution authorizing CDBG funds to Niagara County for Empire Emergency Apparatus, Inc., assuming the first and second previously entered for the board. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried and the resolution adopted. Next before the board is resolution authorizing CDBG funds to the Village of Saranac Lake for Saranac Lake Resort Owners, LLC.
Thank you. Village of Saranac Lake in Essex County is requesting $750,000 in CDBG economic development funds to assist the Saranac Lake Resort owners. Otherwise, we're calling it the Lake Flower Resort, with the purchase of furniture, fixtures, and equipment needed to operate a new year-round resort to be constructed along the coastline of Lake Flower in the Adirondacks. Amenities will include 93 guest rooms, 2 restaurants, a 3,000 square foot meeting space, and a marina with boat rentals. The proposed total project cost of $15,984,000 will create 72 jobs over the 2-year contract, with 53 or 74% of them to benefit low to moderate income individuals. The funds will be used for furniture, fixtures, and equipment with the cost per job at $10,417. Each dollar will leverage $20.31 in private investment. We're requesting a recommendation resolution to provide economic development funds to the village of Saranac Lake. And I'd like to note this project has taken several years to move forward because of the waterfront and the Adirondack Park Agency approvals. And working with ESD, we finally were able to, both agencies ESD was able to move forward, and then with the resolution today, we'll be able to help them as well.
Do you know this place? Lake Flower? No, Lake Flower Hotel. What's it going to be called?
It's the
Is that
Lake
how to
Flower
name?
Resort.
Lake Flower Resort.
Lake Flower.
Okay.
Flower.
Lake Flower. The Lake
Sounds
Flower
pretty.
Resort.
Bunch of old motels they demoed and they can, yeah, it's cool.
Nice.
All right, if there are no questions, and assuming the resolution now before the board's resolution authorizing CDBG funds to the Village of Saranac Lake for Saranac Lake Resort Owners LLC, assuming the first and second previously entered for the board. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried and the resolution adopted. Now before the board and the audit committee is a resolution approving the Gosser Internal Audit Department semi-annual audit plan. John?
Good afternoon, board members. It's a pleasure to be speaking with you again. As reported on the Gosser Internal Audit Department Semi-Annual Audit Plan, February 2019 through June 2019, ID performed a weighted, risk-based Gosser entity-wide risk assessment during the winter of 2018. I believe the 2018 process and reporting improved on the 2017 risk assessment process and reporting, of which HUD's Community Planning and Development Monitoring Team noted no findings and no exceptions with the 2017 risk assessment version. In addition to projects in process reported, IED's semi-annual audit plan proposes the following new audits and review for the period February, effectively March 2019 through June 2019. Each engagement was the result of the 2018 risk assessment process and represents high-value, high-risk engagements to Gosser, lesser so for the outstanding HUD findings and concerns review, and briefly summarized as follows. Number one, the demonstrable hardship applications activity due to contractor fraud audit, a program-related audit. As you may know, the media has extensively reported on housing program contractor fraud. IED will examine internal controls and test transactions and balances with respect to financial, operational, and reporting aspects of the process. Number two, review the outstanding HUD findings and concerns, also a program-related review. The review of outstanding HUD findings and concerns has an objective to ensure Gosser is up to date and working towards resolving outstanding HUD findings and concerns. And finally, number three, the LMI waiver and alternative requirement audit. This too is a program-related audit. HUD granted Gosser a waiver and alternative requirement to reduce the overall benefit requirement for the state's grant from 50% to not less than 35% of the state's allocation of CDBG/DR funds, excluding the $185 million allocated by HUD for the Rebuild by Design project. Restated, the state must use at least 35% of its CDBG/DR allocation, excluding RBD, under Public Law 113 to benefit LMI persons. IED will examine internal controls and test transactions and balances with respect to financial, operational, and reporting aspects of the process to include both current and projected data. IED notes the above three engagements have been discussed with and approved by the Gosser Acting General Counsel, Emily Thompson. And Gosser IED respectfully requests the Board approve the aforementioned audits and review and semi-annual audit plan.
How many, just scroll down. On number 5, the review of outstanding HUD findings, how many outstanding HUD findings are there that you're reviewing?
Approximately 8. I could give you a more definitive number, but I believe the risk assessment process rolled up About 8. Now, HUD had just monitored Gozer in November, and I know that many of the issues, at least some of the outstanding items that were outstanding as of November, had been cleared based upon HUD's exit conference with us. So I don't really know exactly how many are left, just due to the fact that some have been resolved and we have not received
Well, whichever
HUD,
are left,
HUD CPD's.
the ones that are left are the ones you're going to review.
Yes.
All right, so just send an email saying how many are left. That way we'll know how many you review.
Did the LMI waiver already get approved by HUD? Or is that
Yes.
It did?
Yeah. We have to meet 35%.
Any other questions? If there are no other questions, then now before the board is a resolution approving the Gosser Internal Audit Department semi-annual audit plan for February 2019 through June 2019, assuming the first and second entered for the board, as well as the first and seconds already entered for the audit and governance committees. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried and the resolution adopted. Now before the board is a resolution approving the documentation and classification of Malone Village 2.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today I have a recommendation for a resolution of classifying a project as unlisted with a negative declaration. The Auburn Housing Authority proposes to use HTF funding for Malone Village 2 in the city of Auburn, Cayuga County. The project is for rehabilitation of 9 two-story buildings for families with 62 residential units on a 5.2-acre site. Site work will include expanding tenant parking from 68 to 83 spaces, 2 playgrounds, and a maintenance shed. There were no adverse environmental impacts identified, and at this time, unless there are questions, I recommend a resolution for an unlisted negative declaration for the project.
If there are no questions, now before the board is a resolution approving the documentation and classification of Malone Village 2, assuming the first and second previously entered for the board. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried and the resolution adopted. Now before the board is a resolution approving the transfer and assignment of the Town of Eastchester Housing Choice Voucher Program to the corporation. Dan?
Thanks. This is in regards to HTFC's Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Program. As you know, HTFC is the only statewide PHA in New York, and from time to time, HUD will approach us when a local public housing authority is looking to get out of the Section 8 business and offer us the opportunity to assume those vouchers and fold those vouchers into our larger statewide allocation. This is, to some extent, what's happened recently. The town of Eastchester in Westchester County, facing some legal issues surrounding their own program, is opting to leave the Housing Choice Voucher Program immediately and has provided HUD with a very short timeline for reallocating those vouchers to someone else and identifying a PHA partner who can make payments by April 1st. In this very accelerated situation, we are in the process of negotiating with HUD. Our legal team, led by Sheldon Melnitsky, has been talking with HUD staff as well as the Fair Housing Justice Center, who is also involved in the situation as a litigant. And we are about to negotiate a ACC amendment, or annual contributions contract amendment, that would allow us to assume the program. In anticipation of that agreement, we are asking for authorization from the board to finish negotiating that deal, and pending approval from legal and from the commissioner to execute an agreement that will allow us to make sure those voucher holders are protected and that their rental subsidies are paid on time on April 1st.
So Dan, the Eastchester was sued by the Fair Housing Center, and they had some allegations, and now we're taking over, and so I know we've been talking to the Fair Housing Center, so they're not going to be suing us.
So allow me for
Yeah.
a second.
Sure.
So this is something Becky and I have both been very involved in. Essentially, what we're doing at the moment is negotiating an agreement with HUD, and our proposal is that we will step in and make the April 1 payments to facilitate those payments, because we're very worried that individuals not lose, that landlords not be paid, and we put individuals at risk of eviction. But then we are trying to ensure that HUD certifies a waiting list to us, which we would then take over the administration of. Because we think, we're confident that once we're administering the program, we will not perpetuate the fair housing violations that Eastchester is alleged to have engaged in. But how you actually formulate that wait list, who's on the wait list, what priority they're entitled to, is obviously very complicated, and so we only want to step in to the shoes of Eastchester and administer that wait list once everyone's agreed to who's on it. So that's the tightrope that we're walking. Is there anything?
But the subject of the litigation is local preferences. We do not have any in our program, so we are very confident that we will not do that.
Great.
Okay.
Who's bringing the suit?
Fair Housing Justice Center. Fred Freiberg. All right. Any other questions? Now before the board is resolution approving the transfer and assignment of the Town of Eastchester Housing Choice Voucher Program to Housing Trust Fund Corporation, assuming the first and second previously entered by the board. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried and resolution adopted. Now before the board is resolution approving a consultant services agreement with Guide House LLP. Mark, is that you?
Me again.
I think Dan's going to grab
Yeah,
it.
sorry.
On a roll. Moving back again to the PBCA side of the house. As mentioned earlier, we are anticipating a new request for proposals for the PBCA contract in the coming year. In anticipation of the previous RFP in 2018, we engaged PwC as a consultant to help us prepare a proposal. The reason that was necessary was because last year HUD indicated that it was intending to move to a system of regional and national vendors and away from a state-by-state approach, and that would have required us to establish a partnership with New Jersey. In the chance that HUD continues down that path, or that we need guidance in preparing a federal procurement proposal in general, we are choosing to keep PwC under contract now under their new name. They've sort of spun off from the larger PwC corporation, and they're calling themselves Guidehouse. We have not spent any money on this contract to date. They are under contract mostly on an as-needed resource basis, and would only engage them in the event that we needed assistance with preparing our proposal. But given the uncertainty around this contract, we want to maintain this contract so we have them available and at our disposal. So this new resolution will recognize the new legal corporate name of Guidehouse in the new contract. Any questions?
All right, if there are no questions, now before the board is resolution approving a consultant services contract with Guidehouse LLP, assuming the first and second previously entered for the board. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. The motion is carried and the resolution adopted. The remainder of the items are informational items and do not require board action. Item 13 is a review of the secret Type 2 projects. Item 14, a review of the secret concur summaries. Item 15, a review of authorized contracts under GOSER. And item 16, the quarterly project status report for the period ended December 31, 2018. If there are no more questions, is there a motion, please, to adjourn the meeting of the HTFC board as well as the governance and audit committees?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Most of the meeting is now adjourned. I think April 11th is our next scheduled meeting date.